Welcome back. I gotta be real with you guys. I am not an 8-track collector, despite what a cursory glance through my backlog of videos might imply. But there are times when we're out at estate sales and we find stuff that is just too damn cool not to grab. It'd be one thing if they were asking a lot for them, but you're looking at like 15-20 bucks for a piece of equipment that's in nearly perfect shape. It is really hard to say no in that situation. And that is what brings us here today. George, if you would please. This is the Panasonic RE-7070. It's from 1969 or 70, depending on where I look online. It's everything I love about vintage hi-fi equipment. Chrome, real wood, smoked acrylic, brushed aluminum, even the lettering they chose. This is what vintage hi-fi looks like in my head when I think about it. From a design perspective, if you ask me, this is art. And this unit works as well as it looks. So I'm going to take you on a full tour of it, but first I want to show you something interesting. This right here is a pair of speakers from Panasonic. They're also from that same line of products as the 8-track player. In fact, Panasonic put out all kinds of different cool products at that time. Everything from big speakers to turntables to radios and other radios. All of these were part of that same line and each interesting in their own right. The crazy part is every one of these we found at a different estate sale in the last few months. But I'm not going to show you these right now because I have a different video planned for them, hopefully. Right now, we're just looking at this thing. So let's get into it. When you look at the face of this unit, a few things stand out right away, at least to me. The control knobs are interesting. You have the power volume on the far left, which nicely matches the left-right balance knob, the bass adjustment knob, and the treble knob, each of which are just hooked to a pair of potentiometers with no graduations, so they're nice and smooth. The input selector, on the other hand, is a rotary switch and quite a bit stiffer, so the knob has two little wings on it, which make it easier to turn and double as a pointer. Now the 7070X is a full stereo and amplifier, able to drive its own speakers, or you have the option to use a separate amplifier. You have an AM, an FM stereo, an FM mono, a phono input meant for ceramic cartridges, and the tape setting for the built-in 8-track tape player, which we'll get to in a minute. The input you select corresponds to a light on the left side of the radio dial. The dial indicator is lit by 3 incandescent bulbs which produce a nice, easy-to-read, warm glow behind the smoky acrylic front. The chrome tuner dial is nice to grip too, but after playing with that Yamaha CT810 in the last video, this one isn't nearly as satisfying to spin. The flywheel is just a thin piece of stamped sheet metal, so it doesn't have that momentum when you spin it, but it is definitely not off-putting at all either. Whoever did the industrial design on this unit really paid attention to small details. For example, the AFC switch is directly centered under this little chrome handle feature. That switch, for those of you who don't already know or haven't seen my other radio videos, is the automatic frequency control. That's a bit of internal circuitry that keeps the resonant frequency of a circuit from drifting off and making your news, traffic, and weather sound all fuzzy. Also, I love the typeface that they used for this line of equipment. Panasonic was still a brand name owned by Matsushita Electric, and this lettering style was only used for 4 years before they switched to the bolder lowercase style that they use now. For those of you who are interested, the name Panasonic was derived from a combination of Pana for universal and Sonic, who's a blue hedgehog, and Sonic for sound. And now you know that for Jeopardy. You're welcome. Now my favorite part of this machine, and what made it follow me home initially, was this little door. Watch this. It hides the slot for the tape cartridge. I know I say this every time, but notice that there are no transport controls. There's a little lever inside that engages the mechanism and it starts it playing when you load the cartridge. I'll show you that when we get the lid off. Now I thought the only purpose of this door was an aesthetic one, to hide the tape cartridge, but it also has an added bonus effect that the noise from the tape is muffled. Watch. By the way, all that racket is from the tape itself. This cartridge is super noisy. Without the tape, the machine makes almost no noise. Take a listen. Now there's one other thing I wanted to point out about the door. Okay, 2, 3, a few, whatever. Obviously it's tinted, so the cassette is both hidden and still visible, but where the chrome handle lines up exactly with the AFC switch when it's closed, so too does the other side when it's completely open. It's stuff like that that makes me appreciate nice industrial design. Little details. And as well, on the left side, there's a little tab that holds the door closed with just enough friction to not let it move when the machine is bumped or carried, but not enough to make it difficult or unpleasant to open and close. They didn't need to do that, but they did. I appreciate that. I also really like the lettering choices that they went with on the door and the tuner dial. The channel indicator lights are really cool. They're little incandescent bulbs, and they actually light up tiny little number cutouts behind the red plastic as you switch from channel to channel. They're controlled by a little mechanism that's present in almost every 8-track player that I have seen, and it sometimes gets oxidized, so the lights stop working, but it's a really easy fix. I'll show you that too when we get the lid off of this thing. And of course, on the far left, there's a 1/4-inch headphone jack, because there's always a headphone jack. Let's spin it around and look at the back though. On the left, you have your antenna hookups, red and green, NyQuil colors, or Christmas. Next, you have your phono inputs. Those do pretty much what you would expect. Next over from that are the rec out jacks, which are basically a fixed line level output. This is what you would hook to an external amplifier or tape recorder or whatever. Then, over from there, you have 2 RCA jacks for the external speakers. There were originally an optional pair of 7070 speakers that went with this. I believe they had a separate tweeter and woofer inside them if I'm not mistaken. Unfortunately, whoever owned this unit never had those because he had it hooked to a regular amp that wasn't part of the set in his house. I should note that he had it hooked up to the speaker output, not the rec out output. I do not know why we had to actually unplug the little cables from the rec out. So I know that's where it was hooked up. You can actually see where the cables were plugged in. But I do have these, and the impedance matches, so we can at least demo some of this machine.
A person of interest taken into custody for a security breach at a South Carolina nuclear power plant.
All right, so here's the fun part. Let's pull it open. Strap in because this thing has a lot more screws to remove than usual. To get it apart, you first remove the masonite backing by taking these 4 screws off. Then you want to remove the knobs and flip it up on its front on top of like a towel or something so it doesn't scratch. Then you're going to have to reach down inside and loosen these 2 little hex nuts. I don't have a proper tool for that, so I stuck a 5mm socket on the end of 2 extensions and reached in there with that. I recommend getting something longer, at least 9 or 10 inches, because they're really deep inside there. My little socket extension compilation object thingy was not long enough and it was really fiddly. Then you remove all 8 of these screws. The whole top should just lift right off. Next, you have to get the bottom metal panel off. To do that, you have to remove all of these screws. Once that's off, you can get to the pots on the bottom and the screws for the tape mechanism. There are 4 on the bottom and 3 in the front. Unhook the wires from the clips, and finally you can get to the belt, which is fine in this case. Annoyingly, you're going to want several different sized Phillips screwdrivers because they're all different as you go. It's really important to use the right size screwdrivers because it's very easy to strip the heads if you don't. All right, so some of the things I wanted to show you. This little doohickey right here controls the channel indicator lights. As the head moves up and down, this thing rotates. Over time, it gets oxidized, and a little bit of contact cleaner has done me wonders so far. Every time I've thought that a bulb had burned out, I tried hitting this thing with contact cleaner, and that has fixed it. The play button, as it were, is this little lever right here. That gets the whole thing running when you put a tape cartridge in. And if you look underneath, you can easily reach all of the pots for balance and tone and so on. I will say one thing for this unit. It is built like a tank, but I'm going to put it back together before I drop one of these screws on the floor where I cannot find it. So give me a sec. Okay, so conclusion. After looking through some forums online, the consensus seems to be that it's not the greatest sounding unit ever. I played it with both the original speakers and through my good stereo in my living room, and I guess I agree with that to some degree. I don't think it sounds bad by any stretch of the imagination, however, and for an 8-track player, it is more than adequate. But if you ask me, what it may lack in premium high-end sound quality, it makes up for in droves with look and style. I don't really care that it's not as crisp or clear as a Marantz or Macintosh or whatever. If you ask me, this thing is a work of art. I hope you enjoyed that. If I can address the elephant in the new room, I finally built a studio, so I don't have to spend hours setting up equipment in my living room and putting it all away neatly each time. Hopefully that means more than one video upload every 2 weeks. That is assuming that I maintain favor with the thrifting gods and can keep finding things to show you. So I will see you next time. Stay metal, y'all.